Hi, everyone. It's Kate Byers, founder of the Good Life Institute and creator of the Corporate Women Unleashed program. Today, we are in part 2 of our series right now. We're talking about the pitfalls that all of us successful women tend to fall into that have us working way harder than we need to. And what I want to focus on today was a topic I touched on in the last broadcast, where we talked about being a decision maker. Today, we're going to talk about scarcity. Okay. Now, and I've got some notes off to the side of my screen here because it's so important. This is such an important topic. I don't want to forget to, mention some things that we see so often. So scarcity thinking is where we believe life is a zero-sum game. There's going to be winners and losers. And I don't know about you, but as someone who's driven and ambitious, that was certainly not my intention. I didn't want to see people lose, but I was certainly going to be a winner. I don't know how else to say that. And it was sort of like, to the winners go the spoils, to the victor go the spoils is the saying, right? And so when we tend to be highly driven and you have this drive to perform at a very high level, and you love creating business, and you love your career, and you love solving problems, this zero-sum game is going to be highly destructive to you. And you're like, wait a minute, Kate, it's working for me so far. Well, I know, kind of. Sure, we can be high-level competitors and we can believe in the zero-sum game. And it's not saying that it won't create success and money and wealth and recognition and acknowledgement and promotions. Sure, that's one way to play it. I played it that way for a long time and I did quite well for myself until I crashed and burned, right? Until you hit that wall and you burn out and you're like, if this is what it takes to continue to operate and succeed at this level, I'm out. Then it's not working for you, right? And it's not where you can say, yeah, but I want it to work for me until I just want to put it down for a while and go relax and enjoy my life. The reason you can't relax and enjoy your life, another piece of it, and the reason we're overworking as women is this zero-sum mentality, okay? Now, this has been conditioned into us partly in childhood in our culture, right? Like we live in most of us listening to this broadcast tend to live in a pretty assertive culture, potentially a first world culture, a culture where, win at all costs and winning is really celebrated, right? There's winners and there's losers. But it's especially bred into us in the corporate world and bred into us a lot, in the medical community, whether you're a surgeon or a doctor, you cannot lose. There's no margin for error, right? Someone's seriously hurt or dies if there's a margin for error. So everything is about this win or lose mentality. Well, if that is our belief, then we are going to have scarcity. And ultimately what we're afraid of, is becoming the loser, right? Like we're so scared of becoming the loser. Now, you'll notice that in these broadcasts, what I talk a lot about is your emotional state. The fear of being a loser, the fear of missing out, the fear of upsetting someone. And so much of what women are missing out on is that emotional up-leveling as our career advances. Because what we want to focus on and what we're taught in all the training, the leadership training, the strategic thought training, the executive education, yes, emotion is chatted about. I'm not saying it's not mentioned. It has been back when I was going through all this stuff 25 years ago as well. But it's mentioned. It's like, well, don't forget to take care of your mental health. Well, don't forget to take a break. Well, don't forget to breathe a little bit. Don't forget to have fun and enjoy the ride. And it was like, yeah, duh, I get that. But what do I do? How do I do that? Right. And nobody ever really took me through a process of how to increase my emotional self so that I wasn't always living in fear or scarcity, the zero-sum game, okay? And this is key, right? That emotional up-leveling is key. Like for myself, when I burned out, what burnout feels like is you just start to become more and more despondent about your job. You start to care less. You're not so worried about deadlines. You're not so worried about being, on time to meetings in the office. You start cutting the edges, cutting corners, right? And then what happens is you just start being apathetic, which apathy drives me crazy. But you start to be apathetic because what's happening is your biology is shutting down. Your biology is saying, hey, you're not taking care of you. I'm going to take care of you to keep you alive. And so now what I'm going to do is start disconnecting yourself mentally and emotionally from this job or this career you've cared that much about. And that's the beginnings of burnt, or that you're already in burnout at that point, right? Not even the beginning. So if you're playing the zero-sum game where you believe you have to win and someone else has to lose, there's scarcity involved in that. Now, there's a lot of different places we see scarcity. Let me look at my notes. You could be scarcity in your beliefs. Like, there's no way that I could be someone capable of doing this job because I don't have experience, I don't know, whatever, with numbers. Okay, well, that's scarcity, right? Zero sum. There's winners, people who have experience with numbers, therefore they can get this promotion or this big, huge job. People who don't have experience with numbers, therefore they can't have it. And that's big at keeping women playing small, because to be a leader, you don't have to have done the job. It can be helpful. It can also be a hindrance. Sometimes it's really nice that you have zero experience that compared to the people that you're going to be leading or the department that you're in charge of. That could also be a huge benefit. So scarcity thinking is going to say, I can't do this job. I don't have the experience. Oh my God, it's going to take months and months for me to get in there and learn this. I've never worked in this industry before. It's going to be a really long uphill climb before I know what to do. That's scarcity thinking. And you're like, wait a minute, Kate, I thought that was normal. No, it is not normal. That is normalized by our culture within the business world. It is not true. Okay. I can tell you right now that I and the amazing women we work with, once we work with them, they can walk into any industry, any discipline, and they could lead. Doesn't mean that they've ever, gone to trial as an attorney, but they could be leaders of attorneys. It doesn't mean that they've ever done surgery, but they could be leaders of surgeons. It doesn't mean that. Now, that doesn't mean leadership is bossing people around and telling them what to do. Keep that in mind. If you're a good leader, then you know how to help people, get the best out of people. It reminds me of my husband and I just finished watching the first series of Ted Lasso. Have you guys watched that show? Oh my gosh, you guys have Apple TV, you gotta watch it. Sorry, little plug for Ted Lasso. That's leadership, right? What Ted is doing, that is leadership. He has no idea. He has nothing about soccer, about British football, and yet he's leading this team. That's leadership. But what do we do as women? We tell ourselves, oh, well, I don't have experience, doing this thing, therefore I can't be a leader. That's scarcity thinking. Scarcity thinking is what I alluded to in the last broadcast, where we're so afraid to, with money, like we usually think of it around money. It's not always around money, but I'm afraid to buy something, because if I buy something, it's the wrong thing. And then if I buy that thing and it's the wrong thing, and then the thing I really should have been looking for wasn't there, then I'm bad. Well, that comes from cultural, things that have happened in our childhood where we were maybe criticized. Well, you got $5 in allowance, Sally, it looks like you wasted it on bubble gum. You should have saved up for Barbie, or I don't know, whatever. Sorry for to be so stereotypical. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, oh, come on, right? Like, I remember growing up, I love strawberries. I always tell this story because it's just, such a great example of scarcity. And my father, who, grew up in a very different era, in a family that, Depression era, they had money meant something very different to them. He was not a big proponent of me eating strawberries because they're expensive. And he would always make sort of a bit of a remark. Why would you eat strawberries? That's kind of stupid. Like, just eat apples. Green apples are cheaper. You get a lot more. And so it wasn't like he ever told me not to eat the strawberries. It's just he wouldn't buy them that often. And so then, of course, what happened for me is I had food scarcity. Like, if we had strawberries, I would just like they all had to come to Kate. And I would just fight for these strawberries because I might never see them again. And it was the same way when my dad would take us to like a fast food restaurant, because we very rarely, if ever, ate out. Like, if we did a car trip, y'all know, right? Y'all know the 70s era. Come on. It was like PBJs in the car with some cheese whiz and some crackers and a glass of water hanging from one of those little car holder, cup holders that you'd hang into the windowsill. Come on. Like, that was my experience. And so if we actually stopped at a place to get an ice cream or to get a cheeseburger, it was like, I would just stuff my face because I never thought I would see it again. It was zero-sum game. Like, if I don't do this now, then it's going to be gone. Versus going like, look, I can have a cheeseburger from a restaurant any time of the day, any day of the week. I'm choosing not to because I don't want to stuff myself and get too full. And this happened to me. This was interesting, this food scarcity a few weeks ago. Because once you're aware of how scarcity is preventing you from enjoying your life, from enjoying your success, from just relaxing into the success you've created, it's like when you remove the scarcity veil, so to speak, it's almost like, for me, it was like life went from gray to color. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, oh, life's like gray, like it's all really pretty, but it's gray. And all of a sudden the gray goes away and you're like, oh my God, like life is in color. It's vivid, it's bold, it's beautiful. There's possibilities everywhere. But this food scarcity was interesting. So a few weeks ago, my husband and I went out to dinner, and of course it's been COVID, and it's like we haven't been going out and sitting in a restaurant and all this. And so we decided, like, all right, let's do it, anniversary. And it's this beautiful restaurant, one of those, restaurants you don't go to every Monday night or whatever. Like it's, fancy schmancy, whatever. And I have been on this particular eating program for, macros, the whole thing. And I'm like following my macros. I'd already looked at their menu. I knew exactly what to order and how much of it to eat. I had it all planned out. Good girl, Kate. And I get there and we have this charming waiter. And he's like, my husband like orders, I think a cocktail or a fruity beverage or something, that was like had calories in it. And the waiter's like, what? He says to me, you're not having one? Oh, he goes, I'll just bring you one. No charge. Just have one sip. I just want you to taste this. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden I start rationalizing it. Well, it is my anniversary. Well, it's just one drink. I'll move this thing away out of macro and that thing in, and it'll all be okay. And before you know it, I had lobster bisque, and I had scallops, and I had steak, and I had all these things or whatever. And it was like, 3 drinks in and 5 plates later, I'm like, oh, all right, there goes my macros. So I thought about it later. I go, okay, so what created that behavior in me? Like, why did I do that? Because I'm smart. I'm dedicated to my training. I'm dedicated to these macros I'm committed to. I know that I could. Well, I didn't. That was it. And so that was it. What it was what I was telling myself is it's a special occasion. Those don't come around very often, which is ridiculous. My husband and I could go to dinner at this restaurant every night of the week if we wanted to. Like, we just don't, because it's easier to eat at home or whatever. So I told myself it's a special occasion, and, special occasions don't come around every often. And this is a, fancy schmancy restaurant, and it's not every day you get to eat at a fancy schmancy restaurant that has this really, gorgeous, lovely food. And all of that is scarcity left over from my childhood, not just the strawberries and the apples and the cheeseburgers, but it's the sense of this is going to happen once and it might never be there again. Now, this is different, guys, than living in the moment. Living in the moment is recognizing that we need to live our life today and not tomorrow, right? So in the instance of me overindulging on my anniversary dinner, it's just a simple matter of saying, look, what is best going to serve you in this moment? Like, this is just food. And you can have great food anytime you want, Kate. But right now, what you're doing is you're celebrating an anniversary that does not require food. You can celebrate an anniversary without food. And 2, you're dedicated to this health thing that you're on. And those are probably a greater priority than shoving a bunch of food in your face. Like, when you finish this next leg of your health sprint and you have that, those days to indulge, why don't you come back up here with your hubby, with Scott, and I could have gone then. But because of the scarcity overrode that more rational self that would have said, well, what's the really big deal here? Just enjoy what you planned on eating here. Enjoy watching your husband indulge in all these yummy things. That's good for him because he's at a different place with his, eating right now. And celebrate the moment, because that's why you're here. Okay. And that's also what living in the moment. So living in the moment is not just shoving cheesecake in your face because you're afraid you'll never see it again. Living in the moment is saying, what is this moment really about? And let me enjoy this moment without worry about, the future and this thing and this thing and this thing. And so living in the moment is different. So I could have lived in the moment and really enjoyed a lot of cool things about that restaurant without overindulging. Now, is it the end of the world? Am I beating myself up? No, but that was scarcity. I thought about it later. I go, what had me pull away from my plan? Because I need to understand it. Because if I can understand my behavior, then I can figure out how to replace the behavior I had with new behavior that gets me a different result. And 99% of the time, that's what's happening to us girls as successful women is we're still behaving in ways that was conditioned into us in our childhood, in college, as newbies when we first started our career, and it was like, you better act this way, and you better do this, and you better do that, or you won't get promoted, you won't get a raise. And, in many ways that worked for us in the younger years of our career and in our younger lives for various reasons that would be, another broadcast, but it's not working for you now that you are, whatever, decades and decades into your career and you're hyper successful and you're still working your nose to the grindstone and not enjoying the ride and scarcity. If I don't act this way, and if I don't keep my head above water, someone else will take my job. If I don't go on this business trip, I used to tell myself that all the time. I worked internationally for a long part, or a big chunk of my career, and I had to travel quite a bit. But if I don't go, then who else, who's going to help, the people I'm supposed to be over there with? If I don't go, who's going to replace me? If I don't go, will they forget about me? If I don't go, they'll think I don't care. If I don't go, zero-sum game. You could win, you could lose. And that's just not true. That is not true. Now, I'm not saying if you have a career in international business that you should never get on an airplane, but do you have to get on every airplane? I can't tell you, like, the handful of times I actually said, I can't go on a business trip. You know what everybody was like? They're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, well, we'll just fill you in, or, we'll just, why don't we have a conference call at night and I'll fill you in? Like, nobody blinked. Nobody looked at me with cross eyes. Nobody said, oh, Kate, you're worthless. Nobody said, the leadership that I work for, in fact, one particular boss, she's like, oh yeah, is there anything else you need? The only one who was getting me on an airplane all the time was me, because of this. Scarcity creates so much overwork, it's not even funny. Now, this is also conditioned into us because as women, remember, this is still relatively new that we have a place at the table, right? Like within, sure, it's been a couple decades or whatever, but it's been a couple decades. And guys are just, guys have been at the table for just decades and decades and decades and decades. So they're not sitting there going like, wow, if I go pick up my kid early from work, I wonder what my boss is going to think. They're just like, yeah, I got to go pick up my kid. My spouse is busy or whatever. Like, they're not like, they just believe that they have a place at the table. They're not worried it's going to be taken away from them. Again, winners and losers. Women are still playing the zero-sum game. There's winners, women who get their place at the table, and there's losers, women who don't. Instead of just being like, look, people who choose to do what it takes to get to the table, get to the table. And then you enjoy it, and you get to do, you did cool work on the way there, and you get to do cool work when you're there. You worked with interesting people before you were at the table. You get to work with interesting people at the table. Like, it's that simple. But women, we're not looking at it that way. We're just like, oh my God, I got to get to the table. I got to get to the table. And then we get to the table and we're clinging to it. It was like, just holding on so tight because somebody's going to see that we're here, and they're going to, no, it's not going to happen. So a lot of this emotional conditioning, like scarcity, has to go away. Okay, so what are some of the things you do for scarcity? Let me go to my little notes here. One of the things we do a lot with our clients is we create what we call celebrations, or we notice the good things that are going on in the process of getting to a goal. Now, if you're a high achiever like me, we don't do that very often. We find gaps because that's what we're paid to do. We close the gap, and then we set these huge audacious goals. But by the time you even get close to that goal, what have you done? You've already set another one. Have you guys done that? Like, my husband would complain about it all the time. I'd be like, I'm going to go for this. And I'd get like 3/4 of the way there, maybe halfway there. And I'd be like, yeah. Okay. Well, once I knew that the goal was in sight, I'd be like, okay, here's the next goal. Never in a million years do we stop and smell the roses. So you have to be smelling the roses, and you have to be doing it a lot, because life, your career, success is a game. It is not a finish line. Finish line is when we're gone, people. That is not a finish line I'm anxious to get to. So it's about how you're playing the game. If you're playing the game by striving and suffering and being just so tight and just work, that game sucks. Like, it just sucks, right? So really understanding how to enjoy the ride, smell the flowers, notice the progress, even if the progress is this big. And that's really hard for us high achievers, because We don't like little bitty steps. We like big, huge quantum leaps. We like big, huge, momentous results. Well, the way the life is really played well, and to continue to escalate and elevate and get where you want to be without suffering, is you have to do a whole bunch of series of tiny little steps and really notice them. The other thing is start working from a place of possibility. Possibility means you invite failure. Now, I used to think I invited failure, but it was like failure I could control. I never was like, all right, let's just go for it and see what happens. I would be like, okay, I'm 99% sure we could do this. Let's try it. And if we fail, no big deal. That's not what failure is. Failure is saying, look, we have looked at the different possibilities. We're not for sure this is the right choice, but I'm going to make this decision and I'm going to stand behind it. Let's go for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't take much to make that decision. So living in a place of possibility, questioning, is this really true? Being curious instead of just white knuckling things and trying to control everything. All right, I'm curious. Let's see what happens if we try this. All right, I'm curious. Let's see what happens if I do this thing, do A instead of B. All right, I'm curious. What happens if I trust my team to take the lead in this? Let's see what happens. But again, you got to emotionally feel comfortable that you're okay with that and you're living in this world of possibility versus fear. Because most of us have been taught to succeed through fear. I better do this. I better get an A on the test or I'm in trouble, or I'll be criticized, or I'll get, the teacher will be disappointed. My parent will be disappointed. I better get into a good school. If not, zero-sum game. I'll be a loser who has to go to a not so good school. So everything that's been conditioned in us is this fear of failure, instead of embracing failure and looking at the world through a lens of possibility. I mean, it just makes me relax just to think about it. It's just so amazing. The next thing that's really important is to surround yourself with people who believe the same thing. So this is where it gets really tough. And one of the things that we have done that has worked out really, really well for our clients and the women who work with us is that we have like these small group cohorts that sort of all feed into a larger cohort where you can be a part of a group of women who are highly successful, really bright, high functioning women, like, you know what I mean, doing some pretty amazing things in their career, but are living well. They believe, well, because they've been trained, but all of this that I'm teaching, this is their new way of life and their new mode of being. And so what happens is if I'm going to the water cooler of, let's just say, whatever environment I work in, and everybody in there is highly competitive, it's got to be 24/7. You snooze, you lose. To the winner go the spoils. And then you're over here listening to me and my messages, which is like, come on, let's succeed through possibility. Failure is part of the process. Let's have fun with failure. Be sure to be healthy and take care of yourself, because if you invert the triangle and put yourself first, you're actually going to be more successful. And you're over here with wanting to go in this direction because you like this message, but everyone you're hanging out with is over here where life is, hard and stressful and blah, blah, blah. Like, there's just no way, like you will get pulled back into that. Right. And so one of the things that we've done for our clients is we have this program called Corporate Women Refined, where after they, go through the initial process of working with us, then they can hang out with all these other women who are amazing and, with the coaching team and everything else that we do, and really sort of marinate in this, but just have like-minded people. And now you're bringing these business challenges or whatever to a group of women who are going to respond in a very different way. They're not going to respond with competitiveness. They're not going to respond with, well, snooze, you lose, or all those fear-based sort of things. You can be open, you can really sit down and objectively, figure out problems. So you've got to surround yourself with like-minded people who are going or have been where you want to go. Because if not, the ride is the trajectory is too steep and you're so alone, and you will constantly be falling off that trajectory. Like for myself with my companies, I have my own group of coaches and my own group of colleagues who are all running companies. Why? I've never run a company before, right? Like I am corporate Kate. So I've been in the corporate world for 25 years. I've been in the entrepreneurial world for 5. So it makes sense to me that I hang out with people who are entrepreneurs who have already done what I'm trying to do, who I can learn from, as well as other colleagues who are facing similar challenges, because the challenges in the entrepreneur world are often different from the challenges in the corporate world, right? That makes sense to me. So that's like, it's so key for you to be around like-minded people. That will help with the scarcity piece too. And then I think focusing on creating like win-win situations. Like the other thing that we really work a lot with our clients on is when you feel attacked by, someone who's mansplaining you, or you have someone who's defensive on your team, you have a difficult boss who's really challenging, who, I don't know, maybe doesn't seem like they trust you, or maybe it's the opposite, they're just not available to you. How can you create a win-win situation, again, versus zero sum, where, well, if I'm going to get my way, then my boss is going to have to somehow lose. Or if I'm going to get what I need, then this employee is just going to have to stuff it and deal with it. Or if I'm going to get my need, there's always this win-lose competitiveness in how we communicate and how we operate. And that just keeps you in scarcity, because of course, what's happening is if I pull the control from you and I'm like, okay, well, I won this one. Well, what's going to happen is that win is going to be very short-lived, because then I'm going to start worrying about, well, paybacks are hell, or my time's coming. I won this one, but I'll lose the next battle. Like I can remember I had a promotion that was tough for me to go from manager to director. It took several cycles for that promotion to happen. And when it finally did, I remember I had some colleagues going, oh, Kate, this is great. You've been working towards this. And it was great. You found, the right approach and the advocacy and everything you needed to get this. And I was like, yeah, but you know what? The fall's going to be hard. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe that was in my mind. But that's what I thought. It was like, whenever I achieved something, I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Yeah, but just wait, because at some point I'll be attacked, or just wait, someone's going to undermine me, or just wait, there'll be politics, or just wait, I'll have more of a workload, or just, it was always like, here's these negative things that are going to happen because I got this positive thing. And that is really endemic among successful women. We cannot, like, someone will give you a 4.5 star review instead of a 5-star, and you're just going to, we forget about the 4.5 stars, but that quarter of a star that was missing, we're just like, oh my God, 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 how dare they not give me that quarter of a star, right? So we're always looking at the negative and we're never looking at the positive. That makes your job so much harder, because when you come home at night, you're not relaxed. You're always looking for, the jump scare around the corner. Emotionally, like there's just no peace. No wonder we don't sleep well. No wonder it's easier to work than to deal with all the stuff in your head. I mean, one of the problems I had for a long time is I couldn't drive in my car without the radio on, the phone on, my EA chatting in my ear, whatever, you know what I'm saying? I couldn't sit still because of all this stuff in my mind. It was just like, oh my gosh. So I always had to be doing something, because just the act of driving in a car with silence, that would have been the most painful thing for me ever. Because of this, like waiting for the shoe to drop. That is not a thriving life. That is not a life you have control of. Sure, you may be successful. You may have a great paycheck and a great title, but who cares, right? Like that's the whole point, is we want to enjoy this. And if you're living in scarcity, there's just no way. There's just no way. You might as well just pull the plug and, go live on, $5 a month or whatever you're going to do, because at least then the shoe will have dropped. You don't have to worry about the shoe dropping anymore. You know what I mean? But then of course we're worried about the next thing. So it just follows you. So it's really learning that, again, these patterns of scarcity that we've been taught, yeah, they just don't serve you at this point, right? Maybe it did when you were in junior high. Maybe it did when you first graduated college. That scarcity patterning is just creating such a difficult workspace for women, and that has to be overcome. Absolutely. So look, I hope this has been helpful for you. If you've ever experienced the scarcity, or what are some of the things that you see in scarcity in your workplace or in your working habits, or just even in the company you work in the discipline that you are. If you're a surgeon, put it in the comments below. If you're a marketing pro, put it in the comments below. If you're in finance or you own your own clinic, whatever it is, just put in the comments. I think as women, we need to share more too, because we think it's just us. Oh, I'm the only one that has this issue. It's like, no, you're not. Not at all. This is like really something that has been culturalized. And I think the sharing of that could be really powerful. So I hope you'll do that. I also hope you'll watch some of the trainings that we have. So we've got a free 45-minute training that goes into more depth of these topics. Please take a look at that, take some notes, because there's some really great stuff in there that could help you. And again, if you are someone who knows that life could be more than what it is, you're successful, you care about your career, and you know that you're here to make a difference in the world because you have this capacity to operate in your career in a really successful way, but it is just killing you. Please stop. Please don't continue doing that. Like learning, this is like your next MBA, learn this stuff. And all of that goes away and life can get really great. And so speak to somebody on our coaching team. We're happy to listen to hear what's going on for you, take you through some questions that, we find to really help you get better clarity on what is and is not happening for you. And then also get clear on what you would like things to look like. And if that's possible and we can help you, we will totally do that. And if not, we'll get you some other resources, send you to someone else, point you in the direction of what you need to get the help you need so that you don't have to continue to suffer for your success. Cool.